Good afternoon and welcome to Hoosier Huddles. After the dust settles today, we are joined by Alex Compton, Zach Greene of Hoosier Huddle, as well as Matt Weaver from Peegs.com. I'm Sammy Jacobs. We're here to talk about Indiana's thrilling overtime 33-30 win over Western Kentucky on Saturday afternoon in Bloomington. It moves IU to 3-0, which I think is the biggest story here. Are there flaws in this team? Absolutely. But 3 wins, you surpass the win total from last year, which is a step in the right direction. A lot of season left to play, and we did see some good things. Matt, let's start off with you. What were your initial thoughts from the game yesterday?
Well, I mean, I think I like, kind of like with Illinois, they showed a resiliency and an ability to make plays when it counted, when your back was against the wall. Now, obviously, you'd like for it not to be that case, but last year this team, in my opinion, this team might be last year's team might be 0-3 because they were behind in all 3 games, but they're 3-0, and so that tells me that there's been some growth. Defensively, they had some poor play throughout the game, but then in the end there, late in the fourth quarter and into overtime, they made some plays when they needed to make plays, and they gave up some yards, which is fine. Coach Allen talks about all the time, but try to hold them to field goals, and that's what they did late, and that really enabled them to obviously tie the game up and then send it into overtime. And then offensively, they were moving the ball in the first half. They just kept, I think it was like 3 or 4 times in the red zone, and they had a couple, maybe a field goal or two. They had a turn. I remember the lateral. They just had some, self-inflicted mistakes. I like the passing game when it gets going. They really got some weapons there. The running game was, so. I thought Josh Henderson played really well. Like you said, there's a lot to work on, but it's a lot easier to work on things when you're 3-0 rather than 1-2 or 0-3. So a big game this week, but there's. Special teams made some plays. Obviously, Charles Campbell's a big kick. So, I don't know so much about individual players, although there were some great performances individually. I like the resiliency of this team. We did not see that last year. Last year's team would have quit, and it would have been over midway through the third quarter. And this team didn't quit, and they kept fighting, and they found a way to win.
I mean, the game to me really changed. IU, I think, was down 24-13. Yep. Western Kentucky has the ball inside the 10. Cam Jones chase downs Austin Reed. He throws across his body. I don't remember which lineman got a hand on it, but Miles Jackson comes away with the pick and really flips that game. It goes to 22. What was it, 23-19 after that, or 24-19 after that. And I thought they went for 2 a little too early, but that's just me. I thought just the pace of the game, they'd have more chances at possessions. But to me, that was the play of the game. Zach, I want to ask you. You were in the stands yesterday with the students. How was the feeling around those student fans, because there were a lot of uneasy people in that stadium yesterday. Being down 11 in the fourth quarter against Western Kentucky.
A lot of anxiety, and it was very antsy. I think the way the game started, and I wrote about it, I think a lot of the students here expected a blowout. I mean, you hear the name Western Kentucky, and not a Power 5 school, but they've always given us trouble. So I know Coach Allen called them out for leaving, which a lot of people did. And when it got good, it then got bad, and then when it got bad, it got good. So a lot of momentum swings, and it was hard being in the stands, for sure. And I mean, the blocked kicks, I think both were blocked, right?
I think he just missed the first one, the one at the end of regulation. Pretty sure he just missed that, but I didn't have an angle on it on TV. But the second one, Jalen Williams just came ripping off the edge and got it, and good for him because he had a tough day. Now that last pass interference play at the end of regulation was bogus. That ball was 15 feet over his head and uncatchable. But he had another play. I think it was a big third down play where he grabbed the guy and gave him a first down and things like that. But Yeah, it seems like the student crowds this year, Alex, are into it. They're there early. They didn't really stay all that long for all the games. I understand Idaho. Nobody wants to sit through a delay and get rained on, but Allen did throw a little shade at the fans yesterday, saying that, hey, if to get them to stay, we're going to keep it, make it a last second game so that the fans stay. But overall, I've been impressed by the crowds and things like that. Matt, or Alex, we'll go on your thoughts for the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think you start kind of how Matt led us in here. Say what you want. Obviously, I have a lot of thoughts. There's a lot of things to clean up, but Indiana football is 3-0. We've seen absolute carnage across the country so far. In a bunch of different conferences and a ton of different upsets. Last night there were a bunch also. With so many new faces on both sides of the ball and, 2 new coordinators, IU kind of was flying blind a little bit heading into the start of the season. And we talked about it all off season. It had to be 3-0. It had to be a perfect start. And while it was far from perfect, I think, mission accomplished here and what you needed to get done in the first part of September. So that for me is where I really start and finish. We'll get to the stuff that happened on the field, but say what you want about, the program is crumbling and we're moving to the MAC and all this stuff, but IU's 3-0. And if you can't enjoy that part of it, I don't know what to tell you. So, that's where I land. But Matt, I think quick one for you here. Obviously, a lot of talk all off season about both the talent and the level of experience that IU has brought back in the secondary. We felt and we talked about it that yesterday may have been a bend don't break style of game for the defense. I would say mixed results so far for IU secondary, especially Mullen and Williams at the cornerback position. Are you kind of surprised so far that we've played, it seems like, a little more zone and putting those guys off the ball a little more instead of, that aggressive press style defense that we've seen them play, earlier in their careers?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of pick your poison. And Coach Allen mentioned a little bit, if you obviously when you blitz, you're going to be putting guys on islands, and that's one thing this defense is still struggling with. They're just not able to generate a ton of pressure with 4 guys. Now, Deshaun McCall has definitely helped in that regard, but he's still a true freshman.
Yeah.
And teams are going to start to, their film's out there on him, and they're going to start to adjust. Now he's going to have to adjust, and it's a little bit harder when you're a young guy, but he definitely helps there. But when you put guys on an island, obviously you're giving up some big plays. Yesterday in zone, they just kind of looked lost at times. I mean, there were some guys running kind of wide open and free, and it's just like in a lot of sports. If you don't communicate, especially on the back end and in zone, guys got to communicate. You're letting one guy go from your area, and there's got to be communication, and guys got to pick him up. And it just seemed like there were some breakdowns, and they kind of mentioned that after the game. So, I mean, I think it's stuff you can get fixed, but I did think that the secondary would be playing a little bit at a higher level than it has so far. And I mean, Western Kentucky is a tough matchup for anybody. They play fast, even though they're not a Power 5. They got some guys who can play. They've got some transfers from bigger schools. Their quarterback's from a smaller school, but that dude was a good player. So they're gonna stress you. They're gonna stress you, especially on the back end and with their tempo. But yeah, it's been a little bit surprising that at times there's been some struggles back there. You feel, some confident that they fix because you've got talent and experienced guys, but you're starting to get into, obviously, the competition level is going up big time here, starting this week and going forward. So you're going to play some teams. I mean, Maryland comes to mind, where they're going to play fast, throw the ball all over the yard. So you're going to have to get that shored up, going forward. But it's, as far as concerns, that I'm concerned about the secondary after the way they've, kind of been up and down. But I feel, that's an area where there should be improvement. Those guys they've proven themselves. the one thing that I'd like to see better is, and I've said this for the last few years, is you got to rush the passer better with
Yeah.
4 guys. At some point you got to be able to get pressure without blitzing, because it's just so hard. It puts so much stress on your defense when you can't do that. So, and the other thing is, you wonder, Taiwan went down a couple times yesterday.
Yeah.
Didn't look like serious, but I don't know if it's just was heat or cramping, or if he's just a little still dinged up. You wonder. Hopefully not. And when they put Walton Neely and some other guys in, they, understandably struggled a little bit. They don't have the experience, but you're gonna have to play these guys. You're gonna have to. Last year we saw what happened. They had no depth at corner, and it wasn't anybody's fault. It just happened. But you're gonna have to play these guys so that they can be ready to go later in the season if they need to go. So a little bit of a concern, but I feel confident that they can get that fixed. Hopefully I'm right. We'll see what happens going forward.
Yeah, you're definitely right there. Chris Keys jumps out as a guy that played maybe a little more than I thought he would have yesterday as well. Sammy, switching to the offense here. 12 guys caught a pass for IU yesterday. I think that's terrific. 3 running backs, 3 tight ends caught a ball. We did see James Bamba go down on that non-contact play, so we'll have to see if we get any updates on him tomorrow. I guess my question is, how do you balance, spreading the ball around like we have been, with still not finding AJ Barner? It's maddening to me. I think IU's done a lot of good stuff scheming to get the middle of the field open, namely for Emery Simmons and DJ Matthews so far. But Barner had 2 catches for 4 yards yesterday. Besides that touchdown against Idaho, which they thought was a free play, he's been pretty non-existent. How do you get him going?
Well, he's such a big body. You just run him out there, kind of leak him out there like they do with the running back, and just have him go whatever 5-7 yards, turn around, and basically block somebody out. He almost made that spectacular one-handed grab down on the sideline. So I don't think they're ignoring him, but I think people are trying to take him away too. And they also have to leave a guy in and blocking. This is where if James Bamba is out for any extended period of time, which the way that injury looked, it does not look good. You're going to need a blocking tight end, and you're going to need some, and I don't know if Aaron Steinfeld could do that. And it doesn't look like Brody Foley has been dressed and things like that. So yeah, you got to find Barner the ball and make those easy throws, especially for Bazelak, because he started off real well yesterday for the first time all season. He did have his cold spell there between the second and third quarters, but yeah, you have a 6'6" tight end who could go up and grab it. Use it. Just, instead of leaking Shivers out, maybe leak your tight end out and have him turn around and just get him the ball. But people are taking it away as well.
Yeah, I think definitely moving forward that needs to be a big point of emphasis for the offense. But Zach, tell me, digesting the game a little bit. Game probably at this time yesterday, it was probably fourth quarter, getting a little sweaty. Give me one thing you liked on defense and one thing you did not like on defense yesterday from IU.
I'll go with what I didn't like first. I know that Western Kentucky ran an air raid offense and, they're a very good defense, but I thought that they just played the way they were playing zone. It was just like they didn't really adjust. And I thought the adjustments just weren't really there. As well as Western Kentucky had like 3 or 4 huge runs.
Yeah.
And I think that the big run stopped them at the 3-yard line, which was the game. And I guess on defense, what I like is they didn't give up, especially on the goal line. And I give all the credit to Cam Jones. I find it funny that I don't know if that ball touched the Hilltoppers guy on the kickoff, but 2 plays later, Cam Jones just seals the deal. So yeah, they call him the last of a dying breed for a reason. So I would say they didn't really give up, but they didn't make the adjustments.
Yeah, the adjustments part for me, it was interesting. Western Kentucky ran just those tunnel screens and those bubble screens 15 or 20 times. And I mean, there were multiple occasions. There was the one, down on the goal line, they called back on the holding. There were a couple instances where it was one corner on two receivers. And I mean, they just kept throwing those bubble screens because it was, 8 yards most of the time without really any resistance. But, for me, it comes down to, like Matt said, I think there's a real possibility last year this team is 0-3. If you think about how these wins have kind of happened, especially yesterday, not really the games we normally win or go our way. Western Kentucky, like Sammy said, 4-13. They have a 1st and goal. Austin Reed's playing a great game, rolls right. Bradley Jennings tips it, and Miles Jackson, the backup DN, picks it in the end zone. Desan McCullough runs him down, tackles him on the 3. They kick a field goal, miss the field goal to win in regulation, block it in overtime. I thought one of the bigger plays of the game was that 3rd and 15. Aaron Steinfeld made a really good 14-yard grab that allowed him to pick up that 4th down on the sneak. So a lot of really, really tight margin plays for IU yesterday. And those just have not been going our way, recently or, most of the time ever. But so winning on the margins, you can say it's luck, you can say it's unlikely. I would agree with most of those things, but I mean, there is an art to it. There is an art to staying in the game and staying close. Kind of like IU almost did last year, settling for 5 field goals down there at Western Kentucky almost cost him the game. Western Kentucky having to kick field goals yesterday, they cost them the game this time. So, it was an interesting game. But, winning on the margins, you got to do it sometimes if you want to get where you want to go.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked they didn't go for it when they kicked that field goal to go up 8.
Yeah.
I was, a 1st down there probably seals the game. And things like that. But on the coaching thing, I thought Allen made a couple errors that were pretty costly. The 4th down they missed in the first half. It was in the second quarter. It was in the first quarter where they missed, and Western Kentucky scored a couple plays later. Just punt the ball away. Just punt it away. It's too early to roll the dice like that. And I thought the 2-point conversion, the first one, I get it, would cut the score to 3, but you're going to get the ball back at least 2 or 3 more times to go score. You keep it at 4. You don't have to. They were 0 for 3 after that on 2-point conversions. Now I know they got it and things like that, but those are the risks that it was kind of un-Allen like to go for it that early and 4th down in your own territory. I have to mention the referees in this game too. I thought they were terrible. And it's not like there were blown calls. That they made some great calls too. There was a catch by a Western Kentucky wide receiver down on the sideline, which the kid made a heck of a play. But you had the sequence with the targeting that wasn't targeting, which, look, if Micah McFadden got targeting against Cincinnati last year, that's targeting. It was a defenseless player, and yeah, he hit him with the shoulder, but it was right to the head. That's the hit you got to get out of college football. Then it was offsetting and things like that. I get it. I get the play is dead once the Basilak slides down, but number 20, he was out of control. He cheap shot an offensive lineman earlier on the drive, and then he takes a cheap shot at Basilak. AJ Barner didn't touch him. He must have said the magic words or something to get that offsetting penalty. But how number 20 was allowed to play the rest of the game was like, what are we doing? Then they miscalled the punt where it may have hit the Western Kentucky player. They said it hit an IU player first and then the Western Kentucky player. And it took them forever. And then the lateral, that sideways pass, They did. So I don't know if our fans know. They do a quick review now where it just comes from the replay official in the booth and not they don't bring it downstairs. How they did that so quickly and determined that it was a backwards pass and confirmed the call is unbelievable. And that took points off the ball off the board. And then on the final drive for Western Kentucky, they throw the ball's getting thrown away 10, 15 feet over the guy's head and 5 yards in front of him. You throw a flag to set him up for a game-winning field goal. It's like those flags are starting to affect the game. And I know on IU's final drive, I think they had like 33 yards of penalties against Western Kentucky, but they were mugging IU receivers all day. And you gotta call them. The Big Ten needs to do something about their officials. There has to be some level of accountability. I know Matt a couple years ago and against Nebraska, you were very critical of the officials as well. But there's no accountability for these Big Ten officials. They're going to decide games. They could very well have decided the fate of Tom Allen yesterday. If IU loses that game, a lot of people were saying, well, Tom Allen's done. We get rid of him, whatever. So there needs to be some level of accountability on the officials, whether you make them full-time employees and pay them because, working 4 jobs and then going to referee a Big Ten football game is difficult, and I respect that. But man, you gotta be better than that. You can't insert yourself into the play like that. Matt, what was your take on the officials, and then anything else that stood out to you during the game?
Well, I'm with you. I mean, on the Bazelak play where he slid down, I mean, to me that looked like textbook definition of targeting. But even if it's not, that's a personal foul. The quarterback had given himself up, and the guy dove down into him. It's a personal foul. They picked up. There was no. All they called were, if I'm not mistaken, and I can correct me if I'm wrong, but they just called the dead ball penalties that were after the play when the guys were jawing or doing whatever. They picked that one up completely.
They didn't pick it up completely. They got rid of the targeting, but they called it a dead ball late hit because he slid and gave himself up. So the play was technically over.
Yeah. So
okay, but then I guess my question is, wouldn't it be? Isn't that an automatic first down because it was still second down?
Yeah, they said. They said Barner's off. They said they all offset, so we essentially got no yardage, and the play just like we lost a down out of all that.
Yeah, so. I don't understand how that. I don't understand how that happens. I mean, the penalty was during. I mean, to me, the penalty is kind of, I guess, was during the play, but you're saying it's after the play. And then I've never heard of an illegal touching by the kicking team on a punt.
Right.
What is that? I mean, there's illegal touching on kickoffs when you're doing like an onside kick. The guy.
No, illegal touching is. I mean, they don't. The guy liked to talk. The referee liked to talk, but illegal touching, it's not a penalty. It's just the ball's dead. That's what happens when you down it. It's an illegal touch.
Yeah.
So they just don't announce it. They didn't explain it right. And then there was a fumble that got wiped out by a face mask. It was just a complete crap show from the officials. Matt, I want to talk about
that penalty on Williams. Real quick, that penalty on Williams, I was in the end zone, in the north end zone, so I was looking directly at where he was throwing the ball. I mean, he looked like he was throwing that to the first row of the stands.
Yeah.
I don't know how you call that. I mean, it was so far over both guys' heads. I mean, it wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. So I'm with Sammy. My biggest problem, and Sammy brought up the Nebraska game for I don't know how many years ago it wasn't that they were bad against Indiana. They were bad both ways. It's just like an umpire in baseball who calls a strike one inning and the next inning it's a ball. Yeah. I think all guys wanted consistency. If you're going to call it one way, they call it that way the whole time. Don't go back and forth because you can't figure out. You don't know how to play. And I think that's the biggest issue. There's just no consistency. And I thought yesterday was not the best officiated game that we've seen for sure.
Yeah, I wanted to touch upon just the stakes of this IU football season for Tom Allen. He's got, I believe, after the season, if they don't make a bowl game, he'd have 5 years left. I think the buyout is his full salary over those years. Is there any reason to think that like he's on the hot seat, or that he could be done after this year?
I don't think so. I mean, first of all, let's be honest. I mean, this is a university that forced him to, come up with like what, $1 million, 900 or something. Now, to the average person, that's a lot of money. For Big Ten athletic department, that's like finding change in your couch. I mean, that's not a whole lot of money, but he had to come up with that to make a change at the OC position. His buyout, he's what, $4.9 million by about 5 years. I don't think he's in trouble if they lose. Let's just say they, hopefully this doesn't happen, but let's say they lose out. I don't think he's in trouble. But what will happen is, it's not like Indiana's fan base is real committed as it is. This is a flimsy fan base. You have a certain number of diehards, but these people are going to, turn on you real quick, or just basically they just not pay attention anymore. This program lost some momentum last year, quite a bit actually. And if you have another poor season, it's just going to be really hard to get it back. And that's my thing. I mean, that's why that game yesterday, in my opinion, was humongous, because that's the kind of game that if you lose, you're supposed to win. And Western Kentucky's a quality team, but that can turn your season sideways. That can be a game where it really goes sideways for you. And that's why getting that win was so big, and it sets you up. Now, I said you got 9 games to go. You got to go 3-6. And the schedule's tough. I mean, 3 more wins is not going to be easy, but it is doable. But you just got to find a way to try to get to 6 wins and get some momentum back. But I don't think Tom Allen's. I mean, I just don't see. Indiana's never been a school that's going to do that. They don't have the boosters who are going to pony up a bunch of money to make a change at football coach that I've ever seen. So I think Tom Allen's probably safe for at least a couple more years. I think the last 3 years of his deal, the buyout is half of what his salary would be times. So if it's 3 years and $5 million, it would actually be $7.5 million, not 15. So I don't think he's going anywhere, and hopefully they can keep this momentum going. And this is a Butte conversation going forward, and this is something we don't talk about. But obviously, after 2-10, and if you lose yesterday and you start getting a losing streak, this is something that people are going to talk about. But I mean, let's just be honest. At Indiana, this is not how they do business. Whether you agree with it or not, they don't throw a ton of money at the football program. When things go, to get rid of a coach, they'll ride it out for a couple of years, and is my opinion. And hopefully, like I said, that doesn't matter. Hopefully, they keep it going. The season keeps going. They get 6, 7, 8 wins or more, and we look back at this as like, hey, we kind of overreacted.
Yeah, that's my thing, is that if they're not even going to shell out to redo an indoor facility or to build a new indoor facility, why do we think that they have $25 million to throw at Tom Allen's buyout, especially when your AD comes out before the season and says that the TV money that's coming in the next couple of years, it has been already spent. And I get there's things coming down the pipeline where players might get paid by the school and things like that, where you kind of need to have a war chest. But to think that, I mean, everybody was focused last year on Darren Hiller coming back, and they couldn't even get that. And you're right, like Matt said, they have to spend, I think it was $250,000 of Tom Allen's own money to get rid of the offensive coordinator. So I think any of this Allen's done and all that stuff, like, it just stopped. Just enjoy the 3-0 and move on to Cincinnati, and maybe you go to Nebraska and win, because they just fired their coach and they had about 15 seconds of happiness against Oklahoma and got the doors blown off. So, and on top of that, Matt, I know we've had this conversation before. Do we really trust this athletic department to go out and make a good hire at football coach if you get rid of Tom Allen? I mean, Allen is arguably the most successful coach since Bill Mallory, and you ran him out of town. Who wants to come here for that?
Well, and here's the thing: it's not just 25 million or 20 million. If you're gonna do that, then you got to step up to the plate, and you got to go after somebody, and that could be somebody who's an established coach. That's going to cost you more money. They could have a buyout, and then you have to pay him and his salary. And his staff competitive salary. So it's not just the 20 or 20 million or whatever it is, 15. You got to there's cost to bring in the new staff. And my thing is, if you're going to fire Allen just to go out and hire a guy who's not ready for this position or maybe never will be, what's the point? I mean, what's the point? Try to give him some more resources, and to do what he needs to do if it comes to that. But I'm with Sammy. I don't have full faith and confidence that if they make a coaching change, they're going to go out and do what is necessary to bring in, to make a splash, and get the right kind of coach that can come in here and get this thing going.
And if you're going to hire that type of coach, they're going to want the money to be invested in the facilities too. Nobody's going to come here and say, "Oh yeah, I have the tools to win here at Indiana." Now that might say that in a press conference and stuff like that, but they're not to themselves or to the AD when they're interviewing for the job. No, I need this, this, and that, and they haven't gotten it there. So let's get back to the game a little bit, Matt. Let's put a bow on it. Look towards Cincinnati. Who was? We'll start with Matt. Who was your offensive MVP yesterday?
Well, that's a good. You know what? I mean, maybe his numbers weren't huge. I thought Josh Henderson was really good.
Yeah.
I thought he ran hard. I just thought he added something. And I like Sean Shivers. I think you're right. I think Josh Henderson to me should be the starting running back. And I know they rotate guys, so who starts and who doesn't isn't a big deal. But I just like the way he runs physical. He made that great one-handed catch. He gives you a little bit, and that's one thing I noticed when they recruited him, or they went after him when he was coming out of North Carolina. I went back and watched some of it because there wasn't a ton of film on him at Carolina. He played behind two NFL guys, but I went back and watched some of his high school tape from his school in New Jersey, and he played some wide receiver. So he has some experience running routes, and so I think something that he gives you. So I just like what he brought. I don't know if, he was the best player on offense. I just thought he kind of gave a spark, and I like what he brought offensively. I mean, there's some other guys. I mean, Cam Camper was great. Obviously, Connor DeBase made some throws, but for me, I'm going to go with Josh Henderson. I thought he had a terrific game.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Matt, if you thought, I think there's real intrigue now in that running back room. Like you said, Henderson had that great catch. He had that nice touchdown run. He also had that touchdown in the fourth quarter wiped off by the OPI on McCulley, which it was a flag. But they had him outside the numbers, and he ran a slant in with McCulley kind of blocking. So yeah, I totally agree. I think Henderson offered, a little bit of physicality. Shivers had 4 catches also. So I think that's kind of an extension of the running game now. Zach, on your end here, we found out before the game, the backup center Cam Knight was in a walking boot. Apparently the starting center, Zach Carpenter, who has had 2 really good games so far this season, got hurt in warmups. IU turned to Caleb Murphy, who has switched back and forth, O and D line and such, at center. I mean, I think it was another mixed bag from the offensive line. What were your thoughts on the unit kind of overall, Zach?
I thought the unit was iffy. I think that at time Bazelak didn't have enough time to throw. I think when he has probably over 2.5 seconds to throw, and he's really good in the pocket, and he stays on his toes. But I mean, the bull rush was, I understand you really want to see Barner out there, but he cannot block, especially on those bull rushes. And he was getting he was in Bazelak's face, and he made some good throws. I thought overall the O-line was pretty good, but we'll see what happens with the tight end room, because Barner, they line him out up on the outside a lot, and he's a good receiver. But especially with I don't know if Seinfeld's going to step up, but overall it was okay. Iffy. I would like to see them, give Bazelak a little bit more time.
Yeah, I would agree. And like Matt said, I think it's been an issue for IU over the last couple of years is generating that pressure. Western Kentucky had 3 sacks to IU's 2. And then they also had more hurries or pressures than IU's defense did. So,
real quick, I thought Alex made a great point earlier about Barner. They need to get him more involved. He's way too talented to only have a few catches. And I agree with Zach. Blocking's not his forte. honestly, if I was them, I would think if Bomba's out for an extended period of time, I think about what Kevin Wilson did with Brandon Knight years ago. Take an O tackle and throw a tight end number on him, and have him be your sixth blocker when you want to play two tight ends. And so then you can keep Barner out as a receiver.
Who
that's
use?
what I would do. I mean, maybe Carter Smith. Guy played volleyball in high school, so he's probably got good feet. I know you don't want to maybe waste a red shirt, but listen, this is my thing anymore with red shirts. That's the day. That to me, some of that's in the past.
Yep.
And when you're 2-10, you got to win.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sorry, you got to win. And if I'm not saying Carter Smith's going to make you be a winning team, but if getting Barner more involved in the passing game can help you, give you a better chance of success, and I'm doing it. I mean, you got to think about the program. And you know what? It worked out for Brandon Knight all those years ago. I mean, he still had a good career and went on to play in the NFL. So, I'm not saying he can do it. I don't know. I'm just saying that's the name that comes to mind. But that's what I would think about doing because, if you're down, I mean, if Bomba's basically your only blocking tight end, like Ryan Barnes seems like more of an H-back. I maybe look at something like that. And I didn't mean to hijack this, but I just wanted to say I agree. I thought that was a good point about Barner. He's got to be more involved, especially when you get in the red zone. I mean, he's a huge guy.
Yep.
You got to get him involved when you get down there inside the 10 because it's like a basketball play. Throw it up and let him go get it. And he's too talented. That play at Idaho, I know it's kind of a freak play, but that shows you the athleticism for him to come down with that ball, regain his feet and then get in the end zone. And he did that against Idaho last year. He's got some serious athletic ability, and I just think they need to, try to – you don't want to force it to him, but try to get him more involved early on in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw Western Kentucky. I mean, they were just blitzing up the A gap over and over and over yesterday. I mean, if you establish Barner early, like off the line as an actual threat over the middle of the field, I mean, you got to account for him on those slips. So that should also kind of lessen up that pressure a little bit. But, I also agree with your point on 6-0 linemen. We've seen a couple Big Ten teams do it so far this season also. If Josh Sales is your backup left and right tackle, I don't think throwing him out there for some plays as a 6-0 lineman to get him, into the flow of the game and help in pass and run pro. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think, when Knight caught a touchdown against Purdue, I don't think, Carter Smith or Josh Sales would be catching passes, but, I think it's worth trying. Definitely. Sammy and Matt, I want to talk quickly here before we wrap up. I think so far through 3 games, the most consistent and probably best unit on IU's team so far has been special teams. I want to talk just quickly about, Charles Campbell struggled a little bit down the stretch last year. He was 4 for 4 yesterday, obviously had the game winner after we lost 8 yards in overtime. James Evans, I think, is looking much, much more comfortable. Second week in a row, Christian Harris has made a nice play as a gunner. Casey Teagarden leads that unit, and he's kind of the point man on the Florida recruiting aspect as well in a lot of areas. How have you seen those, athletes kind of develop on special teams?
I thought special teams won the game for IU yesterday. Campbell they almost blew it as well. But we'll get to that. Campbell 4 for 4 on field goals, accounted for 13 out of the 30 points. I thought James Evans kicked the ball well. If I'm going to nitpick, I would just wish some of those line drives had a little bit more air under them.
Yeah.
But he had 2 down inside the 20. I think one was at the 4 or something. Yeah. He's looks a lot more comfortable this year than he did last year. Christian Harris, I think that's 2 weeks in a row he's made a nice play on special teams. He's a guy, I think he's from DuPage College. He's been there for a couple of years, and I think that the only time Matt and I noticed him was at practice doing log rolls, Matt, and he looked absolutely miserable. But
yeah,
he's a guy that is athletic, can run down the field and make plays, and he stuck that tackle. Punt return, I really want somebody else other than Connor Delp to return punts. I think he lost that punt in the sun, and at that point, the safe play is just let it go and walk away from it. But it cost them 20, almost 20 yards, I think. But DJ Matthews, like you said last week, Alex, DJ Matthews is almost too valuable to put back there every single time. He almost had a really nice punt return, bobbled it, and I think he got crunched on that play.
Yeah.
And he also got smoked by the goalpost on the Hail Mary at halftime.
Like a WWE move. Yeah.
Yeah, like five guys went
people's
into the
elbow line. Yeah.
five guys went into the goalpost on the Hail Mary. But IU needs to be excellent at special teams all year if they're going to make it an equalizer. And we all on the group text groaned and moaned when Chris Freeman's kick. It was super close. I thought it was a touchback, but
it shouldn't be. But
it shouldn't be that close.
And it was the second one of the game. I think it's the third one of the season. If that's your, if you're the kickoff specialist after you tie the game up with 47 seconds, it's inexcusable. Just cannot happen.
No, I'd rather him hit a little squibber down the middle to the 15-yard line than have him try and get cute with it for a corner thing. Look, if Western Kentucky returned it to the 25, who cares? You burn 5 or 6 seconds off, and they don't gain any yardage. And they weren't returning kicks anyway; they were fair catching them. He had done a pretty decent job all year, but you had the game on the line, and you put it out of bounds. That's a play that in the past, Western Kentucky goes down and hits that field goal, and IU loses, and you're like, "Yep, that's a total IU loss."
Yep.
And things like that. But they have it's Quintero, Alejandro Quintero from junior college came in. He has a big leg on kickoffs too. They've used Charles Campbell on kickoffs. Allen doesn't like to use his field goal guy on kickoffs all that much, just for dead leg situations. But man, you can't have 2 kickoffs out of bounds. It wasn't like it was wet and super windy and the ball's just getting carried. That's mental. That's like, you got to use your head there. And just make the right decision. So that almost cost them the game. I really like how they use Jalen Williams on kickoffs, and I think Omar Cooper could be really good on kick returns too. And if you put both of them back there or alternate, as long as nobody holds, and that was a soft block in the back call on the penalty on Omar Cooper's return. But special teams right now, they won that game yesterday. Even though they almost blew it, they won that game yesterday. But keeping IU in the game, flipping the field a couple of times, making a big hit on punt return. You nearly get a turnover on punt coverage as well. So that's my take. But I do Casey Teagarden was super slick after the win yesterday. On certain angles of certain videos that people have, did a nice head first slide into the turf. So Matt, what's your take on special teams?
Well, I think I think the best thing you can say about James Evans is that we haven't been talking about him the first 3 weeks. It's kind of like the right guard. You only talk about it when he misses a block and your quarterback gets killed.
Yep.
You really only talk about the punter when he's not punting well. And I'm not saying every punt's been great, but he looks just light years more comfortable and better than last year. I mean, he looked like he was scared to death, last year. And this year, I think he's done a much better job. I'd like to see – I'm with you. I'd like to see DJ Matthews off punt return. I think you can make a case. He's kind of like, if you remember the 2019 season when they had the quarterbacks switch because of the injury, and on 3rd and 6, every time they needed a first down, Ramsey would find Walt Phillior. I mean, it seemed like every single time. And I think you can make a case he's kind of that guy. I mean, he's the one guy that they got some other good receivers, but over working that slot, he's by far their best guy. And I just think he's too valuable to risk an injury. And I've said, you got to try to win games. I get it, but you got to kind of balance things too. So I would like to see Jalen Lucas more. I mean, I know it was Idaho, but that one kick return, that guy can put him up and pick him up and put him down. He can really run. He's got some serious speed, and then Omar Cooper is the same way. I think those two guys. Now they're freshmen, so you're gonna have to live with possible mistakes, especially when you get against higher caliber athletes. But they're both high caliber athletes. I would like to see more of them, and maybe a little less of DJ Matthews, just to kind of protect him a little bit. because he did get crunched, like you said. I think it was one of those punt returns, and I was like, oh god, first thing you think is hopefully he gets up. So, but I think special teams has been pretty solid. I mean, like I said, special teams is one of those things where you're only talking about it because it's making mistakes. Usually, if they're playing pretty well, it's not really a story. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe they should be talked about more when they're playing well. But when you're not talking about them, that's usually a good thing.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, just kick it around one final time. Zach, we'll start with you. Final thoughts on the win and overtime for IU, and then early thoughts. Obviously, we'll have tons of stuff on the site leading into Cincinnati, but final thoughts on the win, and then what you're kind of looking forward to on Saturday out in Cincy.
I mean, Tom Allen has said it. A win is a win. It was not pretty at times. It was good at times. It wasn't good at times. Even the vets didn't really step up. I think that what you saw, and I agree with Weaver, that this team probably would be 1-2 last year, or 0-3. So that in itself is like, you got better as a program, and going forward, this week is going to define the team, and I think the year. If we can put up a fight against the Bearcats, and they're going to come out with a chip on their shoulder, especially after last year. I'm sure Micah will be reaching out to the program, but hopefully he'll give a pep talk or something. And, I know this is going to be the first nationally televised game, kind of. It's on ESPN. And, you got to put up a fight. So you got to fight.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, what about you? Kind of final thoughts now after, a day or so after the win, and then kind of looking ahead to Cincy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Zach made some great. A win is a win. I don't know if there's any such thing as an ugly win. Some are maybe prettier than others, but you're 3-0, and that's what you needed to do. They've done what they've needed to do through these first 3 games. To me, the biggest thing is that place is, I'm sure, is going to be rocking on Saturday. They're going to come out and when really want to punch Indiana, you got to come out and you got to match that intensity. And I think you need to get off to a fast start. That doesn't necessarily mean you get up 10-0 or 14-0, but you can't be down 10-0, 14-0 either. I mean, you gotta weather that the first quarter, because it's probably going to be kind of difficult. And if you can go in there and keep it close, or even maybe jump on them a little bit, then you quiet that crowd, and then you just kind of settle in and play football. But to me, you can't get off to the starts you've gotten off to the last couple games, because that's going to be big trouble. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough anyways, but it's going to be really tough if you fall behind and you put yourself in a hole like you've done the last couple of weeks. So get off to a good start and match that intensity. And sometimes teams play better on the road because it's just them. They go on the road and, you kind of bond together. So sometimes you're actually a little bit better on the road because of the environment and how you guys have to kind of come together. So hopefully that's what we see from them this week.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating game on a number of different levels. I think, probably a game IU should have had last year. So it should be really interesting to see, 2 teams now with a ton of different faces, probably different expectations from what both teams had last year. So should be an interesting game. Sammy, what about you? Kind of final thoughts on the win yesterday, and then 6 days until Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's anytime IU can win, it's a good day, and being 3-0 is where you want to be. A lot of people did not think that IU would go 3-0 in their first game. I know the Athletic. First of all, the Athletic forgot to put IU in their preseason preview predictions, and so then they filled it in at 2-9, so that everything else worked. So I think it's Stuart Mandel. So good job, Stu. But it's where you want to be at 3-0. It doesn't, as our friend Ken Bykoff says, it doesn't matter about how much you win by. It's how many you win, and you're halfway to bowl eligibility. Like Matt said earlier, it's a lot easier to work on these mistakes when you're 3-0 rather than 0-3 or 1-2. So it's you take the win, you don't apologize for it, and you move on. Cincinnati's going to be wild. That that fan base. I think they sold out season tickets for the first time ever. It's a 3:30 kickoff. Like Zach said, it's on ESPN2. They're going to be, not a lot of Power 5 teams go to Cincinnati. And so this is a rare occasion for them. They'll be fired up, but you know what? Indiana's been into some hostile environments before. They play every other year at Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State. They've played at Iowa. They played at Nebraska. They've won at Nebraska. They've won up at Michigan State. They've won up at Wisconsin. Now, those were in the COVID year. Nebraska wasn't, but Michigan State and Wisconsin were. So I don't think this environment should phase them. It's a veteran team. Connor Bazelak's played in the SEC, so he's been in front of some hostile environments as well in the SEC East. But like Matt said, it's survive that first quarter. You can't go into Cincinnati and do what you did at Iowa in the opening and be down 14-0 4 minutes into the game, because then it's over. You go in, try and settle it down. This is where I think running that tempo offense really hurts, because you could be down 14-0 real quick if you go 3 and out on offense and they make a couple explosive plays. Just get settled down, get a couple first downs, get through that. I would say even through the first 7.5 minutes. If you could get through the first 7.5 minutes, either tied or with the lead, you're in good shape. And then, this is where that we're all preaching, hey, they've pulled out these games close at the end and things like that's where this experience should help. That you've won Power 5 games at the end. You've beaten a group of 5 team at the end, coming back down from 11 points in the fourth quarter. You have that experience and that belief. And I think that's what Tom Allen, he said in the press conference yesterday, that optimism, that's the character of this team. That's LEO, the manifestation of LEO, and holding each other accountable is, hey, we've done it. We know we could do it. It's not the way we want to do it, but we know how to, we could do it. Nobody wants to fall behind 11 points and have to come back every time. But Cincinnati's a big game. I think the next 2 games are huge. And if you could split them, you're in good shape. You come home for 2 at 4-1, you split those. You're sitting at 5-2 going into Rutgers, and you're sitting pretty. But don't put the cart before the horse. They have to go into Cincinnati, put up, like Zach said, put up a good fight, get out of there healthy, and hopefully Zach Carpenter's back this week. It sounded like it happened in warm-ups, and it was just total shock. But Caleb Murphy, I thought filled in very, very well.
Yeah, it was good for him. The video, it was cool as we wrap up here. Video he had on his Twitter, you could tell he was super emotional after the win. So good for him. Really cool story. But for me, I think, haven't really mentioned it, but Connor Bazelak throws for, over 300 yards again, 2 touchdowns. I mean, the guy's been nails through 3 games. It was fun to watch Penix last night light up Sparty, but I mean, it's hard to not like what Bazelak has done through 3 games. So I just didn't want to let, this pass without saying, another solid game. I think if he plays the game he played on Saturday in Cincinnati, I think IU has a good chance in that game. But Matt, thank you as always. We appreciate your insight and expertise and your time on this Sunday. For Sammy and Zach, we will have tons of other stuff on the site today, finishing up our Western Kentucky recaps, and then obviously a ton of stuff with the pressers tomorrow, and then leading into Cincinnati week. So anybody got any final thoughts here before we sign off?
No, just thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks as always, Matt. And then, like I said, we'll have tons more stuff on the site. So we appreciate everybody watching and listening to this today.